about that.
Well, yeah, but like...
Can I come? I didn't know.
Yeah. So, like... Hey!
What's up, cocksuckers?
Yo!
Yeah!
Where is the rest of the class?
Basement. They got demerits, so I...
Alright.
Yeah.
We're getting good grades today, aren't we?
Yes, sir.
Hell yeah.
I fucking hope so. You better hope so. You're next.
Oh, okay.
All right, boys and girls. So, fuck. All right, children. Fuck, you're older than me. Anyway, today we're going to be taking a look at the historical shit about screaming in music. Now, you may be asking yourself, why? Why? I don't know, but it's an extended vocal technique. It's very aggressive, it's angry. It invokes feelings of angst, emotion, pure, unadulterated sad, and sometimes happiness, I don't know why. And that is why it is such an important vocal technique that we need to go over, and I need to explain to you in an hour-long lecture. Yes, sir, you have questions?
So is it like when you have that feeling that you're not allowed to play on the Xbox one day and you just want to scream?
Yes, and most of the people in this scene have written songs about these things. It's that moment where you can't play on the Xbox and you just want, and you have thoughts about slitting your mom's throat. Huh?
But it's my turn on the Xbox.
We know, honey. We know.
Dude,
And
you said that yesterday. It's my turn.
Okay, do you guys want to go to the basement?
Did you just demerit us?
Don't be cunts, okay?
Okay.
Anyway. But yes, it's a very great way to convey emotion that you can't really sometimes do with singing or rapping, I guess. And there's so many different intricate ways that you can explain screaming, apparently. These are the big four vocal techniques: shouting/shrieking, vocal fry.
Are you going to give us examples of these?
Yes, in the lecture.
Alright.
Not right now, though. Be patient.
Okay. Sorry.
False chord and inhales. We'll get to most of these. Like, most of these are going to be explained in the Deathcore segment. Because for some reason, as I found earlier when going through this, Deathcore is the breeding grounds for vocal styles. We'll get into that, though. Anyways, let us begin. Fuck. 1 second, please. My phone's being a bitch. Alright. So, to start off, we're going to get into why, not why, but the roots of screaming in music with classical and experimental music in the 1900s. Although screams are often suggested in stories performed in the grand opera tradition, they were never performed literally, typically always being sung rather than actually screamed, more implied in a play rather than actually being screamed. The first significant example of an actual scream in an opera was in Wozzeck by Alvin Berg, released in 1922, where the eponymous character screams, "Murder! Murder!" in the fourth scene of Act 3.
I felt that.
You might not want to shout that in Baltimore.
Oops. Anyways, even more strikingly, Berg's unfinished work, Lulu, it apparently just was never released, but then slowly leaked into the public over time. It was written mainly in 1934, and it features a blood-curdling scream as the heroine is murdered by none other than Jack the Ripper.
Oh no.
In
Can
the
I
closing
add
moments of the
another
final
annoying
scene.
question?
I'm sorry, yes, go ahead.
How was screams denoted in the music? Like written down? How was that shown?
I'm not sure, but I'm assuming it'd be the same way you would write it as like a playwright. They say like, scream here, blood-curdling scream.
Okay.
In parentheses.
Yeah, in parentheses. It probably was somewhat similar to that. And then over time, it was adapted to be more like, okay, like this is how you're supposed to say it. Write it in all caps or whatever.
Anyway, it's with an exclamation point.
Yeah, with it. Yeah. Got to put that emotion into it. Anyways, there's another example. Was a very, very early example in 1890. A man by the name of Miscagni put out a play called Cavalleria Rusticana. Rusticana. Sorry, I read it wrong. Where in the final line he screams, "They murdered Toridu!" which is spoken, not sung, and it is occasionally accompanied by a scream when performed. Other composers have employed screaming in avant-garde music, which if you don't know what that means, I mean, you guys are film students, you know what the word avant-garde means, right? You're smart.
It's like when you guard an avenue, right?
Yes! In the 20th century, typically in the post-World War II era, as as composers began to explore more experimental compositional techniques and non-standard use of musical instruments, including the voice, composers who have used like shouting or screaming in their works, there's many examples: Luciano Berio, George Crumb, Georgi Ligeti, Charles Mingus, Meredith Monk, Karl-Heinz Stockhausen.
Did you just say George Mingus?
Yes.
Wait, who's George Mingus?
I don't even
You
know.
don't fucking know Mingus, dude?
I actually didn't even do that much research.
Mingus Reedus and the Big Fat Pingus. Norman Reedus.
We got a funny fucking one in the house tonight.
You know who Norman Reedus is, right?
I know
He's the
that.
guy who played a character in The Walking Dead. He was from
Yeah!
Standing, right?
That dude,
Yeah,
yeah!
his son's name is Mingus.
Any fucking way. The use of hoarse vocals in choral and orchestral works continues today in some productions such as film scores, and mainstream examples include some works by Don Davis and Wojciech Kilar. So, anyways, now we're going to talk about experimental music, which is a very, very vague term for music that cannot be defined by typical means. But these genres, because they're so experimental and they cannot be defined by typical means of the mainstream media, they typically involve screamed vocals because, well, it's experimental. I mean, what are you going to do, just sit there and sing the entire time? You're not a fucking poser faggot that just sings the entire time. We're going to yell, all right? And this is where, you know, it was first used to, like, convey, like, really intense emotion besides just trying to convey, you know, something in a play. It was actually trying to say, like, okay, the singer actually feels this way about what they're writing. A good example is the song Paralyzed by the outsider musician known as legendary Stardust Cowboy.
Wait, this isn't Paralyzer from like the YouTube videos? Is this
No,
a
it's
song?
not that song.
Okay.
No, this is... I didn't write down when it's from, but it's there. But it came way before that song, I promise you.
We're still in like early 1900s, right?
I think so, yes.
You
Kind
think
of.
so?
Kind of.
Okay.
Honestly, it's a little bit out of order as it gets further down, because when I hit heavy metal, I was just kind of like, okay, let's just go over all the metal subgenres. But we'll get to that.
Okay.
But another kind of offshoot of experimental music is noise music, where basically, you know that video where Ben Shapiro explains why rap music isn't music? No?
Partially.
Partially. Basically, in this video, he's like, okay, I'm a music degree student, or my dad is, or whatever the fuck. And he basically says, like, oh, music needs rhythm and melody and harmony and blah, blah, all this dumb shit. And rap music is only rhythm, so it's not music. He would shit if he heard noise music. Because there is nothing. It is literally just taking instruments and objects and saying, let's beat the fuck out of them.
Fucking conservatives.
Yeah, I guess. But so basically, it's of course being noise music, you know, it's supposed to be loud and obnoxious, so it's very famous for its screamed vocals, with examples being noise artists such as Masana or the vocalist Maharati.
Nice.
Now, we're going to talk about blues. Woo! Now, I'm pretty sure most of you would, when you think of blues, you don't think of ah.
Yeah.
But now you can. Because while blues itself didn't necessarily use screaming or shouting as a form of musical expression, they had to do it. Because back in the day when Kansas City blues musicians were playing in dance halls or whatever, it was loud as fuck. Because it's a dance hall. There's hundreds of people gathered in this one space. And you have this like 4-man, 5-man, 6-man band trying to convey their music to all these people. So the singers specifically, and of course technology wasn't as good back then as it is today, had to shout really, really loudly in order to actually have the audience hear them. It was almost kind of like they would kind of gravitate in between singing and shouting to just so they could, you know, let the audience hear them.
Are there any recordings of back when they used to shout?
Most likely, because this shouting technique that was used by these blues musicians was actually eventually incorporated as a musical instrument into blues recordings, such as members of, it actually ended up becoming a movement of sorts with members such as Big Joe Turner and Howlin' Wolf going out of their way to literally just shout their lungs out for no reason.
Howlin' Wolf.
So it's like now we're screaming our lungs out. Now we have an excuse to yell into our microphones. Yes, Howlin' Wolf. And also one of the first well-known songs in the genre to utilize screaming vocals was I Put a Spell on You by, literally this guy's name is Screamin' Jay Hawkins, which came out in 1956, by the way. So we're still pretty early on, actually. But yeah, so blues, the genre you would least expect to have screaming vocals, has screaming vocals, which I think is fine. Pretty nice. Now we're getting into the nitty gritty, because now we're moving on to rock and fucking roll!
Oh yeah.
Rock and roll, before the advent of heavy metal and punk rock, employed occasional brief screaming bits. It wasn't really, what's the word? It was the same as blues. It started off kind of like, okay, we're going to just be singing or whatever. But rock, being rock, was kind of built off the grounds of being an aggressive music genre anyways. So, people started doing that. In the early 1950s, this person named Little Richard put out a song called Tutti Frutti in 1955, which had screaming in it.
Holy shit, that was a
and-
huge plot twist.
I apologize for my awkwardness. I've never done something like this before.
Dude, you're doing great.
Am I? Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're funny.
So I'm gonna throw another plot twist in for you. Do you guys know Elvis Presley?
Who? What?
So you know that JoJo stand, Jailhouse Lock? Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
No,
yeah,
they
it's
do
that
have JoJo stands that are named after Elvis Presley songs.
No, honey, I know. That's my
Blue
point.
Hawaiian.
No, I know. Yeah.
Fucking wonder of you.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah.
Fuck
Yeah.
Fuck
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, he
Jailhouse
gets
Rock
it, yeah.
Not by Elvis?
Huh?
Is Jailhouse Rock not by Elvis?
No, it is.
But
Okay.
it's not a stand.
No, it is. But it's called Jailhouse Lock instead.
Wait,
Oh.
when did that stand come out?
Part 6.
Wow,
It's
I'm
the one that
fucking dumb.
prevents Jolene from leaving the prison.
Oh, I didn't read.
Yeah, where like, I'm gonna make this into a JoJo lecture if I keep going.
Screaming in music was gonna end in JoJo.
Oh my
I'm
god.
gonna embarrass myself on the internet.
Unbelievable
More than you are.
nerdism.
Fucking can't even know part 6.
Roland, we're both white guys with like high-pitched voices, so they won't be able to tell us apart. It's fine.
It's fine.
You have
Yeah,
deniability.
it's fine.
Okay.
But my plot twist is that yes, Elvis Presley used screaming vocals, excuse me, in his music, in various songs such as "Love Me" or "Any Way You Want Me" or "Trying to Get to You." Elvis Presley was screaming.
How present was the screaming in these songs?
Not a lot. It was
give
more
us
like
like
it was almost like more like occasional emotional outbursts. Like it would kind of culminate, the song would build up, and then he would like shout really loudly. It was less like prominent, more just kind of like, okay, I'm getting really excited now, and I'm gonna like.
Okay,
Oh,
used
yeah.
very sparingly.
Yes, it's very sparingly. Yes, it was because it's still at this point. I mean, even though experimental and like music was like kind of like losing its shit, because that's what experimental music does. Rock and roll and its advent, while still aggressive and still hated by Christians worldwide, it was getting there. It hadn't evolved quite to its aggressive partners yet, but we're getting there. Also, some of the lyrics on the original Jailhouse Rock, on the original 1957 recording, were screams, but in later live performances, he removed the screaming in an attempt to move towards more mature songwriting rather than just, taking his mic
these
and
screams
freaking
weren't
out.
seen as high culture.
I'm sorry?
These screams weren't seen as high culture just because they were being used in avant-garde works. Like, when he wanted to clean up his act, he took them out.
Yes. At this point in time, screaming in music was seen as offensive and derogatory almost in a way. It's like if you weren't singing, rapping was also, this was around the time when the rap scene was also starting to build up a little bit more. That was also kind of seen as derogatory, or what's the word? Lesser, inferior, yes, or
Okay.
disrespectful. So it was kind of, it was odd just to hear someone shouting or screaming like very aggressively in a song. So yeah, around that time, I guess in an attempt to appear more radio-friendly or, respectful to the masses, he wanted to move towards more softer, less aggressive styles of music. Another example of screaming in early rock music, in around 1960, someone named Tina Turner had some screaming in her song known as "A Fool in Love," which is this is probably around the time that this was the first time like a female singer was using screaming in their music too, which became more and more prominent over time.
This is the 60s, right?
This is like the beginning of the 60s now.
Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, screaming in general was never really like dominated by females. I think it should be. I think female vocalists in general should be looked at more in terms of aggressive music because they're amazing and I love them. I love women.
Wiley.
And then another. Sorry, my bad. Somebody by the name of Juggy Murray, I found this quote. He commented on the concept of using screaming in early rock music and said, all of those blues singers sounded like dirt. Tina sounded like screaming dirt. It was a funky sound. And then by that point in the 1960s, you may know John Lennon, the member of the Beatles. He had his own solo music and had recorded a song called Twist and Shout on his album Please Please Me. And he did the entire thing in one take. Now his voice that day, when he made that song, was really, really hoarse and not doing well. So a lot of the song was just him screaming his lungs out. And he still released it anyways.
How well
Because
did
he
it
was
do?
John Lennon.
Huh?
Because he was John Lennon.
Because he was John Lennon.
How well did the album do?
I couldn't tell you. I wasn't looking at the sales, unfortunately. I'm assuming somewhat well, considering the Beatles was fucking insanely popular around this time period.
John Lennon.
I mean, John Lennon's solo career is almost as notable as the Beatles' career.
100%. So, I would say it probably did well despite this. I'm sure people still listened to it and went, damn, holy fuck, I want to fuck this man.
Look at his throat was probably only sore because of all the joints he smoked last night.
Exactly. It should be noted though that it was only during like the higher parts of the song where he actually tried to scream. It's kind of more peppered throughout the song, but it's definitely a lot more common compared to what is typically expected in early rock and roll.
And the fact that someone from such like a prominent band is now legitimizing screaming by including it in his work is a big deal.
Yeah, it's kind of like you see this like idol of yours and you're like, damn, he angry, he real angry. It was also noted that he is actually inspired by something called primal scream therapy, which was this thing created by Arthur Janov. And because of this thing that he was inspired by, he actually went on to actually incorporate screaming into later songs such as Mother and Well, 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 rather than, just fucking up and releasing it. Now, we're moving on to my territory.
Oh fuck.
Heavy
God.
fucking metal.
Oh god.
Actually, around here is my territory, but I know more about this stuff too.
All right.
I should mention that now is where I might start to get into the ranty parts because I know a little bit more about this stuff compared to this stuff. I had to research less for this aspect.
All right.
So, let's get into it. While occasional screaming had been used for effect in metal since the genre's dawn in the late 1960s, which was around the time, when screaming was starting to get used in like hard rock and stuff like that. Many singers like Robert Plant of Led Zeppelin, Ian Gillan of Deep Purple, or Rob Halford of Judas Priest employed the technique frequently, very frequently. It was finally starting to hit to a point where music wanted screaming. And not only did they want screaming in their music, but they wanted it in the mainstream. People wanted to hear people go angry.
So at this point, are we kind of like fetishizing screams? Because before we were using it sparingly or with purpose. Now is it just there for the sake of it being there?
Almost. We're getting to a point now where people are kind of like they want to scream in their songs, but they're not necessarily doing it in a way where it's like, okay, I'm screaming in this song because everyone wants me to. It's more, I'm screaming in this song because this is my vocal style and this is what I do. Like, it's like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay,
it's
so it's
just
not
sort
like
of
mainstream yet.
Yeah.
It's just like a few groups
People want to
brought
hear
out.
people shout over a mic. It's not like people can go be like, okay, I want to learn what he does.
Okay.
They're just like listening and being like, oh, that's really cool. He sounds angry. So, screaming as a normal method of lyrical delivery first came to prominence in heavy metal, specifically in the explosion of the thrash metal scene.
Oh, fuck.
Now, if you don't know what thrash metal is, you may have heard of bands like Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, Anthrax.
Who?
These
I'm joking. Please
were the big four.
The merit, Roland.
The JoJo stand. These were the big four of thrash metal around this time in the 1980s. Now we're in the 1980s. We skipped ahead 20 years. These were the big four bands, and while not all of them really used shouting or screaming a whole lot, besides Slayer, all of them kind of used it throughout. And overall, the genre itself was more aggressive compared to basically everything else that was coming out at the time. Everyone lost their shit because it was fast, it was angry, it was pissed, it was I hate the world and I want to fuck a pig or some shit. It was like the epitome of American culture. And it was just great. It was amazing. Specifically though, out of the big four, the only one that really went into like using screaming a whole lot was Slayer, where he did this technique. Now I can actually talk about the techniques.
All right.
Where he would basically just fucking yell. Like, that's it. There is no technique to this part. It's just shouting. And somehow he did that for years and years and didn't fuck up. Yes, sir?
Could you give us an example?
Oh, God, I gotta think of like a... Raining blood from a lacerated sky!
Ah! I'm scared.
Like that. Except there would be times where he would even go higher than that. And there was also a very notable song called Angel of Death where he did this really high-pitched falsetto scream where he went, yeah!
Oh shoot, I know that one.
Yeah, that one's really cool.
What it was from?
Yeah. That one's really cool.
Are you guys supposed to be out here?
Yeah, maybe not. We can move back that way. Gotcha.
Thank you.
Hi, kiddos. We're in a car now.
What the heck just happened?
So do I tell like the actual story? Can I explain? Basically, what happened was I was really loud, as you may have seen before we got in the car. And we got yelled at by someone in the school, so we had to move to the car.
Why? They didn't believe in the music.
Yeah,
They're trying to shut us down.
Yeah.
And there's
yeah.
why are there people there during a pandemic?
Yeah, God forbid, there's people outside. Oh my God.
Why are we doing a lecture in the pandemic?
Because we didn't think to do this 2 years ago, okay?
Yeah.
Anyways, kiddos, we're still on the topic of thrash metal. I'm sorry, we still have to go through the angry shit.
Jackson, stop shaking the car.
My apologies. Thrash metal was influenced both by heavy metal and hardcore punk, the latter of which often incorporated shouted or screamed vocals. The first instance of screaming used as a constant delivery of lyrics was by Chuck Schuldiner of the band Death. And I want you to think really hard and clear about what genre he inspired.
Death.
Metal.
Oh no, I thought he just like encouraged people to die.
Death music.
He just encouraged people to die.
The dying is the music.
Musicologist Robert Walser notes, and I quote, "The punk influence shows up in the music's fast tempos and frenetic aggressiveness and in critical or sarcastic lyrics delivered in a menacing growl. It should, however, be noted that the vocal delivery of thrash metal is incredibly diverse. You know, some bands like Anthrax use more hardcore style vocals where it's less screaming and more like just talking really loud, like, yeah, I'm screaming, yeah, whoa."
Excuse me, question?
Yes, sir.
Musicologist?
Musicologist. The study of music.
That's a thing?
Apparently.
I thought you were just like an art student who specified in music.
I don't know.
Alright, whatever, go on.
I don't know. Anyways. So, where was I? Oh, yeah. But yeah, Anthrax used much cleaner vocalists. Also, you know, there's also Metallica, where James Hetfield, rather than screaming, did this thing that ended up getting used a lot more down the line with some metal bands, where they would add grit to their singing. God, how does Ender Sandman go? Say your prayers! Or whatever the hell. Yeah, like that. Where was I? I keep losing myself. But in comparison to bands like Anthrax and Metallica, there would also be bands like Slayer who do the shit that I showed you earlier, where they would try to go out of their way to create a more evil, angry atmosphere in their music, to suit the dark themes, especially considering Slayer mostly talked about themes such as nihilism and anti-Christianity.
Those are my favorite.
Yeah.
Dude, is this Rick and Morty?
Apparently. Oh God. Some other bands in more recent years, talking about other various subgenres. We're going to briefly talk about a deathcore band, Carnifex. Kind of uses a more diverse screaming, what's the word? Range, I guess. Where nowadays, instead of sticking to maybe one scream, you have a whole range of things. The vocalist for Carnifex, Scotty and Lewis, does a mix of highs, lows, and mids, which you will see as time goes on that the range of different techniques and screams gets more and more diverse, more and more stuff happens. There's an Anne Arundel County car out there that's scaring me a little bit. Keep driving, please. Anyway.
Coward.
They're looking for us. Yeah, and we'll get more into that
Get a shot of the car.
Yeah, like, they're like pulling in. It's like they're looking for us. I hope not. I hope they're just here to do something else. Anyways.
They're gonna fucking come out with a shotgun.
Right, like they're fucking like hunting us.
I had a nightmare where I was just in the car and my parents left to get like stuff, and then the car started driving, so I thought they came back, and then I looked up and realized there was no one in the driver's seat, and I like the car drove itself to like a parking lot, and there was a spooky skeleton with a hammer about to kill me.
Roland, this isn't therapy. Demerit.
Okay, sorry.
Me when I write a song about this, the skeleton is here. Okay.
My parents abandoned me.
Anyways, it should also be noted that screaming in subgenres of heavy metal, such as death metal, is where the birth of another type of screaming called death growling was created.
Okay.
Which is, it's what's the word? It is caused when you do it by the false chord vocals. I don't know how to explain what those are, but basically a death growl is when you basically, if you've ever sighed really hard, like like that, those are your false chords doing that work. And you basically take that sound and turn it into a technique, a scream, where you go, there's various different ways. There's like 5 million different ways you can do a death growl.
Well, that's the famous like death like growl that starts all those metal songs.
Yeah. It's like potatoes. You can do 5 million different things with it, which we'll see when we get down further. Death metal in particular is associated with growl vocals because it's basically where it was created. Death metal, it tends to be more dark or more morbid. Then thrash metal, and it wants to feature vocals that evoke chaos and misery. Misery. And a lot of vocalists from this era and onwards wanted to use vocals that were very unintelligible, very not understandable, because, why would you want to understand the awful, horrible things that they're saying? Especially, bands like Cannibal Corpse writing lyrics about molestation and being fucked with knives. And no, I'm not even joking. They
It's funny.
They have a song called "Fucked with a Knife." Anyways, Natalie Purcell notes, found this quote: "Although the vast majority of death metal bands use very low, beast-like, almost indiscernible growls as vocals, many also have high and screechy or operatic vocals, or simply deep and forcefully sung vocals." Another one, music sociologist Dina Weinstein has noted of death metal: "Vocalists in this style have a distinctive sound, growling and snarling rather than singing the words, making ample use of the voice distortion box. They sound as if they had gargled with hydrochloric acid." The progressively more forceful enunciation of metal vocals has been noted from heavy metal to thrash metal to death metal. It basically, as time went on, people got angrier and angrier and angrier and wanted to make harsher and harsher, more chaotic styles of screaming.
And the scream's becoming more of its own elements.
Yes, it's getting to the point now where it's becoming less of a vocal style and more of like an extra instrument in your music, because at this point with death metal, most of the vocals are just...
Freaking Five Nights at Freddy's sound.
That was it. By the way, for those of you who don't know, that was an inhale scream. We're getting to those later. Anyways, now that we've kind of gone over to the main heavy metal subgenres, we're going to get really into the nitty-gritty and talk about specific subgenres. Starting off with my favorite, black metal.
What?
Despite its name, it has nothing to do with African Americans, just saying. Black metal music is like very fast. I'm not exactly sure how to characterize it other than telling you the things that happen in it. Very high, screechy vocals, lyrics about Satanism, tremolo picking, which is a technique on a guitar where you basically take your pick and you just strum really, really fast.
Oh, dang, that's the I don't want to see the day, like the FCP thing.
Yeah, post-hardcore bands do it, yeah. Woo! And, blast beats where you basically just beat the fuck out of your snare drum.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what black metal's like, and also it's typically characterized by lo-fi production, trying to sound like very bad on purpose so that only certain people of higher taste will listen to it. Oh, excuse me.
Oh, it's because they can't afford mics.
Yes. They typically record these things in forests to become more atmospheric or whatever. But the screaming style, which constitutes a vast majority of the genre's vocal work, it's done in various different degrees. Typically, though, the vocal style you'll hear in black metal is very raspy, false chord screams. In like the higher register, where you'll hear vocalists ranging from shrieks where they're like "Yow!" to like more like raspy stuff where they're trying to like almost talk in a way like this, and just trying to sound generally very evil and demonic as possible. Trying to like emulate almost a cold, evil, and frightening atmosphere, if you will. There's various different examples. Vocalists like Isan of Emperor, or Grudel Jelson of Enslaved, or Pest of Gorgoroth use very loud screaming in their vocal work, while other vocalists take differing approaches, such as Shagrith of Dimmu Borgir, who wants to use a style on par with loud roaring in the band's album Enthroned Darkness Triumphant. There's also vocalists such as John Gassard of the San Francisco band Weakling, or Posse of Darkwood's My Betrothed, who used styles that sounded more like wailing mixed with the genre's present screams. There's also another black metal group known as Wolves in the Throne Room that used very long, shrilling type screams where they, instead of like speaking lyrics, they kind of just let the instruments do their thing and just yeah over it. It's very inspired by Gorgoroth's.
Do they kind of record it separately? So they record the instruments and record the screams?
It's usually the way things work is that instrumentals are recorded first and then the vocals are recorded on top of it. So, I mean, they kind of just do whatever sounds correct with the music, I guess. Yeah. There's also, we're going to talk about a micro-genre for a second, a genre known as folk noir, which...
what?
Folk noir. It fuses together elements of folk music with black metal. A lot of artists in this scene use like guttural growls and shrieks, occasionally, mostly for dramatic effect. But this would also be eventually used more commonly in genres such as metalcore or deathcore. We'll get into that, of course.
I mean, that kind of makes sense because blues and folk are really similar, and blues started out with a lot of screams.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's almost like it's coming full circle in a way.
When was the folk noir scene biggest?
I couldn't tell you. I didn't really look that up. I just kind of wrote down about folk noir. I probably should look that up. But folk noir, it's a very tiny genre. I had to look up certain bands. I listed like Imperium and Uaral, which are both bands that I had never even heard of until I started doing my research.
Was that Urara?
Uaral. Uaral.
Oh, there's too many letters. Never mind. I thought it was just the two. They added a third one in there. That's wacky.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, now we're going to move on to metalcore, my favorite genre of music. Metalcore is a genre that employs both screamed and clean vocals. It's very frequently referred to as bipolar metal because of this, for its shift from angry metal riffs to very clean guitars and happy sounds. Is everything alright?
Yeah.
Okay.
We need to change out the battery soon?
It became more of a traditional standard for the genre in the early 1990s when it was first coming up with bands like Earth Crisis and Converge, who used the vocal style very frequently. There are even a few bands, and it's actually still a common trend in metalcore today, where they will have a dual vocalist setup where they'll have one person, typically the lead vocalist, screaming, and then another person, maybe another vocalist or maybe another band member singing. For example, one of my favorite bands of all time, the Devil Wears Prada, does this. Their lead vocalist, Mike Kranica, does all screaming vocals, and also some spoken word vocals in some songs, while their rhythm guitarist, Jeremy DePoister, does clean vocals. And they've literally done that their entire career. They've never, neither vocalist has dipped into the other style.
Is this the genre where Black Veil Bride and stuff comes up, where you have that mix of, like, pop singing, basically, and then screams?
In their earlier work. Black Veil Bride's earlier albums can be considered metalcore.
Yeah, like 2011, 2012.
Yeah, but everything after that is more kind of like just traditional hard rock. But yeah, definitely, Black Veil Bride's earlier music could be characterized as metalcore. In fact, if we're being honest, they kind of were ripping off another band called Avenged Sevenfold when they were also a metalcore band.
What? Ripping off?
Yeah,
that never happens
right?
in music.
I know, right? But yeah, that's kind of what happened. Black Veil Bride's bangs, though. You should check them out. Another example of a metalcore vocalist that's very well known is Greg Pusciato, who is no longer in a band. He was formerly in a band called the Dillinger Escape Plan, which is actually another microgenre called mathcore.
No, I heard about this. Isn't it like there's like some math involved in like the
not necessarily
the time signature?
It's basically the whole thing is that they just switch from time signatures. It fuses math rock with hardcore punk basically. It's basically like, let's completely change the time signature like every 5 seconds and just be as chaotic as possible. It's like it's like if you took noise music but made it slightly more tolerable to the masses. Slightly. Converge also can kind of fit into that genre with their earlier work like Jane Doe. They it's like super aggressive, super fast, super crazy. And Greg Pusciato has a very distinct style of sounding. He does vocal fry, which is, I'm going to try to do this. I don't have any water with me, but basically vocal fry is what you use to talk normally. But when you don't put as much like air into it, it's like, it kind of.
Are you going to survive this?
Yeah, I'll be fine.
Okay.
It's not like it's. I'm trying to see if maybe it'll sound right, but it's basically, typically you start off doing the grudge noise where it's like, and then,
spooky.
Excuse me. You take that and put both more air into it and more air and more like you push it a little bit harder, and you also, if you want to go for higher ones, you can add like a falsetto behind it to like make it sound more streaky. Basically, as it gets louder, it goes like that. Now that was kind of I'm not good at fry vocals. Let me just say it right now. I suck ass at vocal fry. But that's basically what it sounds like in kind of like the beginning stages. All right. Alrighty. So we're done with metalcore now. Now we're moving on to the genre that actually is probably going to take the longest because, as I said earlier, deathcore is the breeding grounds of new vocal styles. Why? I don't know. I guess this is where people decided they really wanted to be weird.
Roland, are you trying a new vocal style, or do you have COVID?
No, I'm singing my favorite song by Insane Clown Posse.
Ew. Anyway. Like metalcore, deathcore is known for its use of aggressive screaming, a much more extreme rate than compared to metalcore. By the way, specifically, I forgot to explain. By the way, metalcore is a fusion genre between like classic heavy metal and hardcore punk. So you can try to like imagine that in your head. Deathcore is very similar. It combines elements of hardcore punk, classic heavy metal, and death metal into one nice, tightly knit package. Basically, there's all kinds of different vocalists we can talk about, like Phil Bozeman of the band Whitechapel, who literally created his own vocal style. There's not really a name for it, but basically he took the death growl and then altered his tongue positioning. I'm gonna take my mask off for this. Basically, when you're just doing a regular death growl, I mean, you're kind of like, your lips are kind of like, you have what we as vocalists call butthole lips, where you basically, when you're doing it, you're just trying to sound really low, so you're kind of having that shape, and when you want to go higher, you can be like, yeah, And what I'm doing is literally, it's all the same scream, but just with different lip shapes, so that you can have different varying pitches or intensities. What Phil Bozeman did was he took his tongue and did that instead of messing with his lips to make a completely different, more guttural, toilet bowl-y sound. Don't know why there's so much toilet humor in this one, but basically, he would curl his tongue back like this. Now, when I do it, I typically do it to the side because that's just how I personally learned it, and it would create a sound kind of like this. If the regular death growl sounds like this, his death growl sounds like this.
He's a monster.
Yes, that was why it was so cool, because he literally sounds like a monster, and it's so cool. So, where was I? Okay, I just did the death growl the Phil Bozeman death growl, and that's basically what he did. And he did that death growl, and it completely inspired the entire deathcore scene of the early 2000s to also start doing it. Although it didn't really catch on with a lot of vocalists. Most vocalists in the deathcore scene kind of still stay doing the regular vocals. Within the past decade, though, 2010 to now, you cannot find a single person doing that. Everyone does the gurglies now. Everyone. Like, most people do the Phil Bozeman growl now. And Phil Bozeman himself is cited as basically the grandfather of deathcore because of how important and influential his band was. Another one, which I'm not actually going to try and demonstrate this because I could not try to do his vocals if I tried, is Alex Kohler. He was formerly in a band called Chelsea Grin, which is also, fun fact, the band that got me into the genre. Wouldn't be here talking to you about this without them. Woo! He's not in the band anymore, unfortunately, but he is very well known for having incredibly high-pitched high screams. He also did vocal fry. He actually went into it not knowing what he was doing. He's actually said in various interviews that he had to learn as he was going, but he started off doing inhales. I think this is a good time for me to talk about inhales. Inhale vocals are exactly what they sound like. You're inhaling instead of exhaling. It's also a form of vocal fry, but imagine hitting your vocal fry in reverse. So instead of instead you're going backwards and going instead. You should not do it. This is why I wrote be safe. Right here.
Please zoom in on that.
Inhale vocals are incredibly bad for you. Do not do inhale vocals ever. Literally, you can mimic the same sound doing inhale vocals by doing vocal fry. And you won't hurt your voice. It is incredibly damaging. Like, I can't even do it without coughing. It's awful. Don't do it. Don't do inhale.
Don't do this. No, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. I don't want to do it. Stop filming me. I don't want to do it.
Stop filming me.
Stop filming me. I don't want to do it.
You can literally do the same thing. Like, for example, if I do an inhale, like, that's a very simple inhale. Yeah. A lot of there's another genre called slam metal that basically exclusively does those styles of vocals.
Are those people still alive?
Yes. The vocalist of Cranium killed himself, but we're not going to talk about it. Basically, you can literally mimic the exact same sound with vocal fry, because, I mean, you're basically still hitting the same aspect of your throat. And honestly, you can take that and make it sound much better. Like, it's 10 times better. Don't do inhales. They suck. Anyways, so basically why I was saying that is because when Alex Kohler first started out in Chelsea Grin, he was doing inhale vocals, and it fucked his voice up, like, right away, which is why he had to change to doing false chord lows, which sounded 10 times better than what he was doing. He also changed what he was doing with his high screams. I'm not sure how, but they sound different in between their first and second album. They went from being more like super high, like high-pitched screams, to being more like almost leopard sounding, like demonic, more of the raspy black metal type thing I was talking about earlier. And yeah. So Alex Kohler is also really huge in the scene. Basically, Alex Kohler was the king of high screams, and Bill Bozeman was the king of lows, if you will. Also, another very important scream that was created in deathcore is pig squealing.
Oh no.
It is exactly what you think it is.
Okay.
Like, it is not even, literally, basically people would take you can do it either with fries or false chords, and it's nowhere near, it's basically it's like non-existent in the scene nowadays. It's very sparingly used, but back then in the day, a band called Job for a Cowboy went on a website called MySpace, and
What's that?
I don't know. And they advertised the fuck out of their EP called Doom. And basically, throughout like this whole EP, this motherfucker just did hella pig squealing. Just over these breakdowns and heavy death metal riffs, where he would literally just go for no reason. It was a good time, really. You can also do it false chord where you go like that. It's kind of an extension of the Phil Bozeman death growl, where he would go like that. It's basically where you take your butthole lips and you make them even more buttholey.
Does that mean smaller or
smaller? Yeah, sorry, I should have been more specific. And you go from
some of us have pretty wide buttholes.
Yeah, I mean,
can you give him a demerit, please?
I don't know. Maybe I should. I don't know. I'll think about it.
All right.
But basically, we decrease it in size to create a more unintelligible sound, kind of harking back to the old school days of death metal. But making it sound more gurgly and monster-like if you were fighting a sea monster or something. Like that.
Is that the sea monster or the sound we make fighting it?
That's the sea monster. And basically you take that technique and then turn that into the pig squeal, where it goes by like opening your lips in a weird way, like, kind of making a very common way to practice screaming is by doing your vowels, and that's the E vowel. Like that. Yeah.
E.
But yeah, that's pig squealing. I still have like 2 more vocal styles I gotta go over in deathcore alone. I'll try to maybe not.
Don't kill your voice.
No, it's not. That's not the problem. I'm trying not to like get too ranty, I guess.
Yeah.
The first one I'm going to talk about, made from like 2015 to 2015, maybe 2016 to now, made the deathcore scene shit itself. And it's called tunnel throating.
Oh no.
Tunnel throating is what your grandma worries about in her sleep. It's the one thing that you do when you go to the gatherings and you're like all your extended family is like, what the fuck, your kid's really weird, hon. Basically, the technique itself, it didn't even have like a name or anything. It was originally created by someone outside of the deathcore scene. His name is Travis Ryan, and he is from a band called Cattle Decapitation. They fucking bang. They're so good. But that's beside the point. Basically, the technique itself is where... So, okay, another extension of like the kind of sound, they're referred to as gutturals. But another type of guttural you can do is where you take your tongue and you push it against your top teeth. And it kind of makes like almost kind of like a high-pitched noise. And of course you can do all kinds of different mouth shapes with that. And it makes all kinds of like cool noises. But Travis Ryan said, what if I did that, but down here?
Oh no!
On the bottom instead of the top. And basically, he took that. Basically that noise, which kind of, it's almost like a more beastly growl, where it's like, and of course you can do all kinds of things with that too. And then he said, what if I push my tongue out of my mouth?
No!
And actually try to become the monster. And that created tunnel throating, which sounds like this. It's basically the most demonic I think you can get with screaming. and he would mostly use this technique to just sound crazy as fuck. Like, he also used it in a melodic sense. I don't even know how he did it. But he would basically sing with this technique. I can't really do any of the songs that he does, but like, for example, he did it with vocal fry instead of false chord. I did mine with false chord. Like, that's false chord. He did his with vocal fry, which is more like, I can't properly do it right now. My voice isn't, I need water, but.
Get him water. Piss in his mouth.
He's already drained. Tyler pissed in the woods earlier, by the way.
Tyler, did you actually do that?
Yes, he pissed in the woods.
Why?
Because why wouldn't you?
There's a pandemic.
What does that have to do with pissing in the woods?
That seems unhygienic. I'm just saying.
Well, no, but it's not like anybody saw him piss in the woods. I didn't even see him piss in the woods.
What if
Oh
someone's...
no, I saw a young boy be in the woods. I have COVID now.
Anyways,
I'm exposed.
so where was I?
I should have saved it for Jackson though, you're right.
Oh, but it's fine. But basically, like, if you try to do that with a vocal fry, you can do like where you try to like sing it. It's like
You just do Mary as a Little Lamb.
that was I was trying to do Mary Had a Little Lamb.
Did they do that too?
No, but,
no, that was
I was trying to demonstrate the melodic like tunnel throat technique that Travis Ryan would use. Like, I'm trying to think of a song. It's like he almost sounds like you ever think of like what a troll under a bridge sounds like if he was trying to do opera?
No.
Yeah.
Well, now you can. Cattle decapitation, boys and girls. I'm trying to think of a really good song. Oh, A Living, Breathing Piece of Defecating Meat. That's a good song. Living, breathing piece of defecating meat. Dun, 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 dun. Massacre, expressing legend. I mean, I don't know if you could really detect the melody, but it's there. It's a little bit more like, well, he does it better, I think I'd say, than I do. Anyways, so that's, yeah. Travis Ryan created tunnel throating, and then another man in the Americas by the name of Dickie Allen saw Travis Ryan and said, I'm gonna make that, like, Travis Ryan, in addition to that, he also did, kind of your regular death growl type shit and gutturals and shit. Dickie Allen saw tunnel throating and said, I'm gonna make that my entire vocal style and just do nothing but that. And then he joined a band called Infant Annihilator and put out an album called the Elysian Grand Devil Gallery Arc. And the entire scene fucking lost its mind.
What, is this a whole arc in music?
Uh-huh.
Oh, hell yeah.
Where the deathcore scene said, holy fuck, that sounds cool. And not only that, but he even created his own vocal style, where in addition to doing the higher tonal throats and the high screams and shit, he was also doing, in a low context. Up until then, Travis Ryan had only really done the super demonic sounding one, but now you can also sound like a beast and do this like that. So that's what Dickie did, and basically everyone was like, wow, that's really cool, I want to do that too. And now everybody does it. Everybody in the scene does tunnel throats. Every deathcore vocalist in the past 5 years does tunnel throats. You cannot find a single one that doesn't. Such as, here, excuse me, I had an air bubble in my throat.
I wonder why.
Examples such as C.J. McCreary of Signs of the Swarm, David Simonek, who is now the vocalist for Signs of the Swarm. I'm trying to think of other ones. Kyle Anderson of Brand of Sacrifice. There's a bunch. I'm blanking right now for some reason, but there's a bunch that use this tunnel throat technique now. It's very popular. Another vocal technique used in deathcore music that isn't as popular, but the scene also kind of, it wasn't really, they didn't shit their pants. It was more kind of like a poot, briefly, where they were like, oh, this sounds cool. And that is whistle tone screaming. I'm going to try to do that.
Is this going to be very experimental? Are you going to do a stunt right now?
Maybe.
For us?
Maybe God will shine upon me and grant me his eternal wisdom. Do you know, okay, have you guys ever listened to, like, Mariah Carey?
Yes.
Or Ariana Grande? You know how they do that? Okay, like the Ariana Grande song where she goes like, I can't do it, it's too high.
Is Ariana Grande just in this room right now?
Like that, where she goes super high. Me doing that was an octave down. She does it an octave up above that, and it's super high. And it's because she used something called the whistle tone registry, where it's super fucking high. That's all I really know how to explain it. It's almost kind of like an offshoot of fry vocals, where basically you're pushing super hard to get this super high sound. Now imagine taking those singing vocals and turning them into a fucking scream. It's basically a man trying to be a woman. In the most brutal context possible. Imagine invoking images of insane asylums or people being in pain. Getting punched in the balls, that's one, yeah. I'm gonna try and do it. I've done it before. It's like, no, I can't do it. But it's basically super fucking high. It's like this really intense shriek, and it definitely was not created by anyone in the deathcore scene. It's definitely been used by other people in various contexts. But the person who popularized it was a man named Guillaume Villeneuve. Never know. Guillaume. Yes, that's how it is. It's Guillaume. Thank you. It's Guillaume Villeneuve, who was a member of a Canadian deathcore band called Beyond Deviation. And he did whistle tone screams in conjunction with all the other shit that, he does. And everyone also lost their shit, although not as much. Beyond Deviation, unfortunately, didn't get as much recognition as they really should have. They're super good. Unfortunately, Guillaume is no longer in the band either, but that's besides the point. Nowadays, though, there's another band. They ironically just got canceled. Not going to go into why. The vocalist of this band, called Shrine of Malice, his name is Greg Gilbert. He is literally 19 years old. He's the same age as me, and he can do whistle tone screams, and I'm incredibly jealous. But basically, now Shrine of Malice is getting popular, and now people are trying to do what he does. Although it's weird. It's almost like everyone is talking about what he does, but they're not really trying to, I haven't seen a whole lot of bands coming out that are also trying to do whistle tone screams. But it definitely influenced the scene to the point where people noticed it and were like, wow, that sounds really cool. But it wasn't to the extent of tunnel throating. Tunnel throating, basically, 2016 happened. The Infinite Annihilator album came out, and everyone was like, wow, I want to be Dickie Allen now. Yeah, that just straight up, everyone wanted to copycat Dickie Allen. I'm pretty sure that's it. I think that's all I have to say about deathcore. Yeah.
I have a very quick question.
Yes, of course.
So I've noticed that in the naming schemes for these, it goes like heavy metal, then black metal, then metalcore, then it's deathcore.
Uh-huh.
So do the words metal and core have any significance in the title of the genre? You think
That's
the
what I
word
thought about.
core
There's
might
actually a police officer.
Yeah. Okay. You think the word core might actually come from the core of your body, because you're sort of singing from the diaphragm?
No.
Okay.
It's called, the term hard.
It was just a
I would have to
theory.
look at the reason why it all comes from the music genre hardcore punk. I would have to look up what the term hardcore originates from. But you might have to do with what you were saying. It comes from the core of your body and it's hard. Anyways.
All right.
Next up, we're gonna go a little bit further back in time. To alternative metal and new metal. So I think Ed is familiar with this. I almost wish he was here.
I almost wish he was here.
I almost wish he was here, yeah. These type of bands typically use screaming vocals as well, very frequently. Specifically, a good example is Jonathan Davis of the band Korn. I probably should give it some background too. All metal and new metal, it's hard to really describe the aspects of it. It's basically very heavy riffs, slower tempos, and 5 million vocal styles. It's the weird metal era of the early 90s, or the 90s in general, actually. Excuse me. Basically, bands like Korn, or System of a Down, Slipknot, Limp Bizkit, Deftones, bands in that vein. And Jonathan Davis of Korn was a very notable example. Kind of moving between softer singing while also doing a mix of very angry shouting. And this was an example of, again, using less technique. Now that we've gotten to metalcore and deathcore, there definitely is a lot more technique to how you can do certain screams, and there's...
Yeah, it's no longer just experimental offshoots. There's a tradition built into it.
Yes, now it's okay, now I can... Now, like I said with the tunnel throating, now I want to learn how to do what this guy or this guy does and incorporate it into my own music.
But this time I'm gonna, swallow my tongue.
I hope we don't get that far.
Guys, we invented a new genre.
No!
Fucking to the choke core. Yeah, basically it's the weird metal era, and it was this was kind of reversing it a little bit. It was people getting super emotional and wanting to, put emotion to their music, and so they would do less. They would do more shouting and shrieking because they wanted to put more emotion into it rather than having like an actual technique to it. Not every band was like that. There are some bands that did have certain techniques that they're screaming. Jonathan Davis was not one of them. He would just straight up yell. He also in some songs would do like death growls or like shrieks. For example, there's this one part, and I cannot remember for the life of me what the fuck that song is called, but it's a Korn song. I literally just listened to it like a couple weeks ago. It's super good. And it's off their second album, Life is Peachy. And there's a part where the breakdown hits and he goes, "Would you get the fuck out of my face?"
I'm
like
sorry,
that.
dude. I didn't know I was impinging on you. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, and he does that. And that was definitely a very jarring thing to hear in that genre of music. That was kind of like, because it was like, you go into like new metal, all metal thinking like, oh, this is like kind of like radio metal. Because at the time, that was what was getting onto the radio at the time, was like new metal and alt metal. So you go into this song thinking, oh, this is going to be kind of cool. And then you hear that. And you're like, holy fuck. Like, yeah, Korn was pretty pissed in the early days. There's also another one. We have Front Woman that I want to talk about.
Front Woman?
Yes.
Is this a band or a song or a genre?
No,
Or a woman.
This is a like, you know you have front men? Now this is a front woman.
I don't. What's a front man?
A vocalist.
Okay.
So it's a female vocalist. Otep Shemaya of the band Otep would go back and forth between super high pitched shrieking, screaming shit to just the lowest death growls possible. Very talented human being, basically. Very talented. Another one that I'm very familiar with, Serge Tankian of the band System of a Down. Well, typically he didn't. There's less screaming and more singing in their songs. There are occasional outbursts of emotional, angry shit where there's yelling, there's shrieking, there's melodic shrieking. There's literally a song where he goes, "Bah, bah, 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 bah," like that.
That's cute.
Yeah, it's wonderful. He even does inhales, which I never would have thought that I'd see a fucking new metal band do inhales, but whatever. Don't do them, by the way, still kids. Fry vocals, singing, like, just really, he went all over the place too. Oh, that was also another common thing. I mean, it wasn't so much to the extent of like trying to sound like a demon like Deathcore did, but new metal and all metal vocalists really went all over the place too, and really wanted to basically cover all bases. The whole point of new metal was like, let's take metal and just fucking fuse it with everything. It was like that plate of nachos that you see that has like mac and cheese and guacamole and salsa and beans and extra cheese and extra cheese and extra cheese, and I pissed on it. It's like that. I had a sandwich yesterday that was like a burger, and it also had it's like the McGangbang. That's yeah. It's like that basically. That's what new metal was, which is also partially why it was very commonly hated by a lot of critics or metal elitists to say, oh, it's not death metal, it's not thrash metal. Well, you're not fucking music then.
Was it not even real music,
oh my God,
dude?
Rapping on my metal song? Nope, couldn't have that.
Well, I mean, what was the target audience for rap over metal songs?
People who liked rap but wanted it to be more aggressive. White people. Yeah, unfortunately, it did. I don't think in this part, like at this point in time, African Americans hadn't really bled into the metal scene a whole lot yet. It took a couple years.
What time are we talking right now?
Right now, we're in like late 90s.
Okay.
So I mean, there was, but it was mostly like more obscure bands like Living Color or Candiria that had African American.
So it's a fairly like white scene.
It's a white male dominated scene. It still kind of is to this day, but there is definitely more diversity, which is always appreciated. Like nowadays you have so many different both vocalists and guitarists. Will Swan from Dance Gavin Dance, Misha Mansour from Periphery, Adam Warren from Oceano. I don't know his name, but the guy from Fire from the Gods. There's all kinds of different people that you can point out. Women too. It's becoming less and less of a white male dominated scene, and I think that's really important. Woo! I think that's really important.
Diversity!
Yeah, diversity. Anyways, vocals.
Sorry.
Actually, we're going to talk about rapping now. Limp Bizkit.
Hell yeah.
I don't like this band, but I think they're very important because I do like bands that were strongly influenced by Limp Bizkit. Limp Bizkit was basically the band that made rapping and metal music cool because their vocalist Fred Durst pretty much does nothing but rapping with occasional screaming here and there on their first album, and very rare singing. So I'm not into them, but you should always, even if an artist or band is someone that you don't personally like, you always have to appreciate them for influencing the people that you listen to today. It also harkens back to the whole like new metal isn't music like bullshit, where like elitists from that scene, like the thrash metal scene, would come over and be like, "Damn, your music fucking sucks, loser."
Oh no, that's
you don't
mean.
listen to real metal. Bitch.
That's kind of mean. No,
it is mean. It's almost funny how a scene where people who are bullied and want to listen to a music genre that not many people listen to, then go within their own scene and bully other people who listen to that same style of music just because it's different stylistically.
Sounds like fighting game players bullying people who play Smash Brothers.
Yeah. That's a very good comparison, Roland. I'm giving you $5 later.
Wait, really?
No. There's also some other artists that are very important too, where a lot of new metal bands around this era were trying to just be pure aggression and anger, but there were also some more experimental homies, like Chino Moreno of Deftones, or Corey Taylor of Slipknot.
Oh fuck yeah!
Who
paint my hair blue and call me Marge Simpson because I love you, homie.
Okay. They would juxtapose very quiet singing bits with very angry sudden bursts of emotion into and they also created this thing where basically, you know how most songs have the verse chorus verse structure. It ended up getting used a lot in metalcore music where basically in the verses it would be like screaming, in the chorus it would be like singing, and then the bridge of the song would typically have maybe a mix or one or the other. It would be relegated to maybe a softer part or a heavier part, regardless. But basically, bands like Slipknot and Deftones created this structural way to position screaming in music that got used a lot in genres like metalcore and occasionally deathcore, because sometimes there's singing in deathcore.
Which goes back all the way to rock, when the screams were intentionally used at certain points of the song to create an effect.
Yes, but it's almost kind of more like a formula. It's actually also another reason why modern metalcore gets hated on a lot, because it's kind of formulaic, where it's like, okay, we're gonna copy and paste this here and then put this here. It's almost kind of like how pop and EDM music is nowadays, a little bit. Although I enjoy it more because it's just the style of music I like. But basically, they kind of created this way to formulate it and make it packaged in a way, if you will. Anyways, there are two specific vocalists from this new metal scene and alt metal scene that I want to talk about. One of them you definitely know, Chester Bennington, formerly of the band Linkin Park, rest in peace. Is very well known for being both an amazing singer but also a great screamer. He did vocal fry. Chester Bennington did vocal fry. Very important thing, because a lot of people think he does shouting, and I think sometimes vocal fry can get confused for shouting. Because when done in a certain way, it can sound like shouting, but it's not. It's just a more emotive way to do a healthy scream. Vocal fry, by the way, is the healthiest way to scream out of everything. You're least likely to fuck up your voice when doing vocal fry. But another aspect of vocal fry is that because it requires little to no air, you can hold it really fucking long. You should not be able to hold a sound for as long as you can.
Question.
Yes.
How long can you hold a vocal fry?
A vocal fly?
Vocal fry, I'm sorry.
That's a great question. I've never actually tested it.
Alright, let's do it.
Let me just make sure I can even make the sound right now. Yeah! Whoa! Okay. 3, 2, 1. It broke off. That was about 14 seconds. I'd say that was pretty good. That's actually around the time that these dudes did it. What reason I'm saying this is that Chester Bennington, basically Linkin Park had this song on their third album, Minutes to Midnight, called Giving Up, and at the end he does a 17-second scream, and it's amazing. It's very well known throughout like various forms. Like if you find like compilations of the longest screams in metal, he's always at the top because of that. And what's even more amazing is that he can could replicate it live as well, which is fantastic.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, I always thought Linkin Park was more like metalcore. What separates it from metalcore and makes it more new metal?
So, they're nothing like metalcore.
Oh, you're an idiot.
No, he's not. Don't be mean.
I'm sorry.
I'll piss on you, Roland.
You know what? That was really uncalled for. I apologize. I should have thought about the consequences of my actions.
Scream at him!
Alright, I'm good. Peace achieved.
Anyways, yeah, Chester Bennington's one. Another very notable long scream, I guess that's what we can call them, is Michael Barnes of the band Red.
Oh
they have a
shoot!
song
I know that band.
Do you?
Yeah,
I was gonna say, actually, you're a Christian, right?
I am.
I'm pretty sure they're very well known, like in like the Christian metal.
They
scene.
are, yeah.
Does Christian metal?
Yes, Christian metal is a thing.
And a very small percent of it is good.
Well, yeah, I mean, Christian metal is kind of like, it's not really like a genre, it's more like a, because it's just like a topic, it's basically like, you can do it with any genre, basically, of metal, like subgenre. Like, there's deathcore bands that do it, there's metalcore bands that do it, there's alt metal bands that do it, new metal bands that do it. You can basically just, it's a lyrical kind of thing, and I guess Red is associated with that. And they do, the vocalist, Michael Barnes, does a 13-second scream in the song Let Go, which is pretty cool, I think. Anyways, we're done with metal now.
Woo!
Now, we're on to the last genre, the last two genres we're going to talk about, and that's hardcore punk and punk rock. So, basically, punk rock, of course, as you know, is an offshoot of classic rock, where, like, it's bands, like I said, like The Adolescents, Suicidal Tendencies, Turnover, and hardcore punk was basically taking punk rock and making it faster, more aggressive, more angry. And vocalists in this genre typically, again, they're not really screaming for the sake of like with technique or anything. They're more just shouting because they're angry and they wanted to show their emotion into the microphone rather than being like, oh, I have a technique to this kind of thing. Basically, it was kind of distinguished by a general tendency to eschew traditional singing techniques in favor of a more, like, direct car style, which, it was meant to kind of show, like, it was meant to show off the lyrics more and show just how pissed these people were. Like, this is me yelling into a microphone. This is not, like, some bullshit where I'm singing my emotions or whatever. This is me completely 100% basically venting into a microphone. It was meant to show how they really felt rather than being like, okay, I'm singing and I sound nice or whatever and these are my thoughts. No, this was them being pissed off as fuck into a microphone about various things like politics and their moms not letting them play on the Xbox. And of course this was also kind of where like aspects of rap music were also starting to kind of like pour into the music, like gang vocals, which is where you basically have every member of the band kind of chant along with the vocalist to certain like lyrics, like yeah, whoa, and stuff like that was very common in other offshoots of punk rock and hardcore, like oi and street punk. I don't know what either of those genres are. I don't know why it's called oi. It's really weird.
The genre is called oi?
The genre is called oi with an exclamation mark at the end of it.
There's an exclamation point in the name of the genre. I'm very intrigued.
Oi! Yeah, it's really weird. But yeah, that's hardcore and punk rock. And now, the one last thing I want to talk about. We talked about the history of screaming, but something that's very important too is the health concerns that can come along with it. There have been various vocalists. Be safe. Be safe. There have been various vocalists who don't know what the fuck they're doing. And they hurt themselves. Their throats, their singing voices, their vocal cords.
Their diaphragms.
Sure, yes. Yeah, you can. You can hurt your lungs and shit.
Yeah.
If you really put that much effort into it. some good examples. I had one in my head and I forgot what his name is. Sonny Moore of the band From First to Last, or a post-hardcore band. He had to leave the band because he was doing damage to his vocals from touring and improper screaming and such. You may also know Sonny Moore as Skrillex.
What?
Yeah, he is the dubstep producer Skrillex. He basically left From First to Last and then became Skrillex because he couldn't use his voice anymore. He's actually back in the band now, but they haven't done anything since he's joined the band again. They put, like, I think 2 singles out or whatever, but that's besides the point. He came back to the band now, hopefully, with the knowledge that you should know how to scream now, I guess.
Yeah.
Another very notable example of someone who had multiple problems, like multiple issues, not just with their voice, but with touring in general, was Kyo of the Japanese metal band Duran Grey. Basically, Kyo.
Oh wait, I know about that.
Do you know who Duran Grey is?
Yeah, I didn't they make like that one song that got put on LimeWire or something that people thought they made the song, but it was just like someone making fun of Duran Grey by like putting together like audio of people screaming and then like remixing it.
I don't know. I never even heard about that.
What are we gonna do to this lecture?
I'll send it to you I'll link it to you later.
Duran Grey, yeah, I'd say they're kind of experimental, but overall you could kind of sit them in like the all metal, new metal category. But Kyo basically is like, he just kind of goes all over the place. He basically like let's incorporate every vocal style possible into one song kind of guy. And because of this, a lot of the stuff he would try to do would be very improper, like just trying to make it the most inhuman sounds possible, or just, straight up shouting or whatever. To the point where he was diagnosed with, what is it called? Vocal nodule dysphonia, also known as vocal polyps. Basically, where you overuse your voice to the point where it creates sores in your throat, and it can make you sound very raspy. And it was so bad to the point where he had to have literal vocal surgery for it, to fix it. They're still making music, so I'm assuming everything's okay now. But yeah, it got so bad to the point where this man had to literally have surgery, which is why nowadays it's much better to become a screamer compared to back then, because now with the advent of genres like metalcore, deathcore, and some new metal bands, now they know what they're doing and they have certain techniques to properly do it rather than just fucking screaming into a mic. Specifically, Melissa Cross is a very well-known screaming teacher throughout the metal scene in general, who actually started off as just a regular singing coach, but then evolved into a screaming coach as well to try and save people from hurting themselves vocal-wise. She's taught people like Randy Blythe from Lamb of God, and Angela Gasal, who used to be in Arch Enemy. And she's worked with all kinds of different vocalists. You can find so many videos of her on YouTube of just her working with vocalists, doing different warm-ups, and just showing off stuff that looks like it's unimportant, but it is incredibly important to refining your voice and helping you find your own voice and making sure that you can healthily scream without hurting yourself. She's incredibly influential and incredibly important. And that's why I wanted to end it off the lecture with that, so that if anybody in the audience wants to go home and try to scream, that they don't fuck up.
Be safe when you scream.
Be safe when you scream. Be safe.
Be safe.
And that, kids, is the history of screaming in music.
Tyler, do a scream for us.
The future screaming of music, however, that is you, dear audience.
Yeah.
It won't be if you're not safe.
Yeah, be safe. Wear a
wear a mask.
Wear a fucking mask, Jackson.
Put a pop filter over your mic, you faggot.
Tyler, do a scream for us.
I'm leaving.
All right, bye.